Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's executive. We've got a very full room this morning, but it's great to see everybody here. Do we have any apologies for the meeting?
No, Convener, there's no apologies, there's full attendance.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest? No, none intimated at this time. We have the minute of the meeting of the executive held on the 13th of February, which is in the papers and been circulated. Are we happy to agree? Is there any matters arising from that minute that anybody would wish to highlight? Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. I don't know if it's appropriate, and if it's not, just tell me. But I've had, and it's not to these minutes for the bonus rec.
I'm just going to kind of come to that in a second. If we could just approve the minute and come to that in a second. If there's nothing on the minute, I'm going to just ask Mr. Keswick to just give a short statement around the bonus rec. I'm not going to take questions on the item. If anybody does have questions, then please contact the service after the or Mr. Keswick after the meeting, and I'm sure he'll be able to provide you with the answers. Main reason being, I think there might well be questions. We don't have an item on the agenda today, but I'm sure our officers will be able to do that. I'm not taking questions, Councillor Spears. I'm going to go to Mr. Keswick.
Question on the bonus rec.
I've moved on from the minutes and we're doing the statement. Councillor Spears, I'm going to Mr. Keswick.
Well, that's what you call shutting someone down, isn't it?
Investigations on the pool walls where the upset backing. Then structural engineers were appointed and reported back late on Friday evening when the report states concrete pool wall is subject to significant deterioration due to corrosion. Its structural integrity cannot be confirmed. They comment further that in comparison to previous photographs, the water seepage through the concrete has increased. The condition of the concrete has further deteriorated. The conclusion is it is recommended that the pool water be immediately drained down to remove load from the wall, and that in the interim period within the plant room corridor, access within the plant room corridor is prohibited. It is expected that significant remedial work, including partial removal and reconstruction of the walls, would be required given the anticipated level of corrosion to the reinforcement. Further intrusive investigations would be required to fully inform the scope of the works. Given these findings, at the first opportunity yesterday morning, emergency discussions took place with a variety of colleagues, including senior leaders, building design and construction professionals, engineers, sport and leisure and health and safety colleagues, together with the external chartered engineers to review the findings. The unanimous conclusion was that in the interest of health and safety, the pool would close with immediate effect and the areas advised now having access prohibited. The pool area is now secured and we are now progressing appropriate processes to drain the pool. Unions and staff have been engaged, elected members advised, customers where possible have been contacted.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Keswick. So say if you direct your questions to either directly to Mr. Keswick or to the service, I'm sure that any answers will be able to be forthcoming, but it was an emerging situation and I had to take very swift action in relation to that. I'll now move on to the rolling action log.
Yes, thank you, Convener. And as usual, the rolling action log records the decisions of this executive where reports have been called for. Where the report is not available by its duty, there are comments, and there are comments in general on the progress of each of the actions. The rolling action log, as far as I can see, is up to date, but it is available for questions from members.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. I'll open up for any questions in relation to the rolling action log. Councillor Nimmo.
Thanks, Convener. Just a question in relation to 667, that's the Grangemouth Flood Protection Scheme. I note that we're not due to get a report back until November, but we are at the notification stage and there's various things happening. There was a public engagement event yesterday and also tonight in the Grangemouth Town Hall. If for whatever reason, we have to go to a public inquiry, how many objections would be required and what type of objections would warrant a public inquiry?
Okay.
Thank you, convener. There is, as Councillor Nimmo points out, a number of engagement events. And the purpose of the update report will be following the analysis of all the engagements, the land reference and the activities that are ongoing. Before we get to that.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, convener.
Sorry, Councillor Murtagh.
I was just to let you know, convener,
Councillor
I've
Murtagh, we can't hear you.
you not hear me at all.
That's better. Yeah,
All
we
right,
can hear
okay.
you now.
Right. I didn't actually do anything. I think there might be a bit of a delay. It was just that Mr. Ketterick, I couldn't hear him after the initial, and I think there might be a problem with his microphone, or there might just be, I checked with others in the room and they couldn't hear what was being said. So I don't know if it's just a dodgy connection, but my lip reading is quite good. But I'm not sure exactly what Mr. Ketterick said.
I'll ask him to repeat that, but we'll maybe
Just
swap over the microphone.
Yeah, just in summary, if that's okay. Thank you.
So, convener, the Councillor Nimmo is correct. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. So Councillor Nimmo is correct. There has been a number of public engagement events going on. As part of that and the land referencing process that's ongoing at the moment, we will seek to identify any objections. These could be technical issues. They may be issues in relation to how the scheme is designed, for instance. It's difficult to quantify what would result in a public inquiry. They would need to be substantial, and there is a process prior to you getting to that stage where local resolution would try to take place, particularly where it is individual concerns that are raised. Where they're thematic and they're voluminous, then there would be engagement with the reporters to identify whether that would warrant a public inquiry, because local intervention has not been possible to resolve those. But it is difficult to quantify, and that would be a decision that would need to be considered at a later date as part of the notification process.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ketterick. And Councillor Patterson.
Sorry, it was just a technical point that I think there is an issue with Teams. Councillor Steinbank had been taken out of the meeting. I see he's rejoined now, but there might be an ongoing issue.
I think it just to cut in there, Councillor Patterson, I think it's just with my computer, and I think I've resolved it, so it should be fine.
You have my sympathies, Councillor Steinbank, in that respect. Okay, if there are no further questions in relation to the rolling action log, are we happy to agree?
Agreed.
Okay. Moving on to item 5, which is the growth deal. And again, Mr. Ketterick.
Thank you, convener. The purpose of the report is to seek approval for the Falkirk Growth Deal full deal document to be submitted to UK and Scottish governments for approval and then subsequent signing. The report provides an update on the progress on the development of the outline business cases for the 10 Falkirk Growth Deal projects and the Greener Grangemouth programme. Members will recollect back in June 2020, the UK and Scottish governments announced their support for the Council's submission for the Falkirk Growth Deal, with funding totalling £90 million, £40 million from UK government, £50 million from the Scottish government, which includes £10 million specifically for Greener Grangemouth. The programme was matched by the Council's £45 million commitment for New Town Hall Arts Centre and £5.8 million investment from Scottish Canals. Through the Invest Falkirk division, and specifically the Investment Programmes Management Unit, the development of the Falkirk Growth Deal, the Green Freeport Tax Increment Finance Programme and Levelling Up Fund, together with strategic other infrastructure investments, enables all of these significant proposals to complement each other. As outlined in the report, strong progress has been made with 8 project OBCs submitted, the Greener Grangemouth Programme OBC submitted, and a replacement project for what was the Public Transport Net Zero Centre, previously supported by ADL, now replaced by the Forth supported Transport Renewables and Career Exploration Hub. And this has also been submitted at a strategic outline case stage. It is anticipated that the first project will be ready to commence delivery by the summer, subject to the full deal and full business case sign-off. And the table at 5.3 shows the current status of each project and how they align with each of the themes. There are huge benefits to the Falkirk Council area, including employment creation, labour supply benefits, land value uplift, improved transport provision, increased visitor expenditure and numbers, and upskilling of our workforce. The full deal document, which is provided in draft format in Appendix A, sets out the detail of how Falkirk Council will implement and manage the Falkirk Growth Deal, and this forms part of a suite of documents designed to provide assurance to funders, stakeholders and communities that partners are committed to ensuring the investment is coordinated across the area and the benefits are fully maximised. It is acknowledged that whilst the full deal document gives a framework for delivery of the proposals, it does not legally secure the funding itself, and this requires the development, assessment and submission of subsequent full business cases to both the UK and Scottish Government for all individual projects within the programme. And clearly, as part of our governance arrangements, those final business cases would be brought to Council Executive for approval, following consultation with the relevant stakeholders and review by the Growth Deal Board. In conclusion, Convener, the agreement of the heads of terms for the Growth Deal is an important step on our journey to the delivery of the Growth Deal, which aims to set out sustainable and inclusive growth for the area. Substantial progress has been made, and we are now ready to seek the approval of UK and Scottish governments. The signing of the full deal heralds the commencement of the delivery stage of the Growth Deal, and we'll look to unlock the funding in the near future. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kenrick. It's good to have the final document that will support the heads of terms which agreed in December 2021 for the Falkirk Growth Deal. I just want to thank everybody involved in pulling together not just the document before us, but all the work that's gone on into developing the projects and the business cases. So I know it's not been without some challenges, but today is a milestone in agreeing this document and the final proposals to be submitted to both Scottish and UK governments. And that includes the huge support that we've had from our partners across the district. Falkirk Growth Deal is a public-private partnership, but it's quite unique. And we are a single local authority with our partners being Scottish Enterprise, Scottish Canals, Forth Valley College, Forth Ports, as well as governments. Programme investment has great potential to deliver significant economic benefits to both the community and the business, with growth and innovation and focus to ensure that a just transition to net zero. But just as importantly, it will be investing in people, places, culture, and tourism, which is reflected in the projects which are detailed within the appendix. With £90 million of investment levered in from Scottish and UK governments, it's anticipated that it will deliver over the next 10 years up to £680 million in economic benefit, with 357 direct jobs, with much more in the supply chain, including 1,395 within construction. Increasing visitors across the area, improving connectivity while bringing new investment across the council area, which will bring benefits to everyone who works, lives in the district, and now, both now and in the future, helping to address the socio-economic challenges that face us. The individual projects, which are 10 in detail, which have been shared with all elected members, and there will continue to be regular progress updates as we move to the next phase. It will, however, be critical to ensure that there's a comprehensive plan for the community and business engagement, with regular communications provided, particularly to Grangemouth residents, with the Greener Grangemouth programme as it's rolled out. The outline business cases are now complete, and submitting the final document for approval will allow us to move to the next stage, one that will be the most critical for our communities, with the final business cases enabling the drawdown of the funding and delivery to begin. So I just want to say well done to everyone involved in getting us to this stage. It's been a huge amount of hard work, but there's still more to be done in actually delivering on this, and that will be critical to how we actually make a success for the Falkirk area. So I'm happy to move the report. Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Convener. I almost called you Provost there, but Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, between yourself and Mr. Ketchett, you've covered pretty much everything there. I had some words written down, but there's no need to repeat anything. So I'm just happy to second.
Okay, thank you. I'll now open it up for questions or comment. Councillor Spears.
Thank you. A question for Mr. Kettrick. You mentioned the Grangemouth, the greener Grangemouth and climate change, if I'm right, and an office that was going to be there. Does that mean SEPA, the Scottish Environment Protection Agency, maybe eventually move to Grangemouth and we will have somebody that can handle any problems on our doorstep?
Convener, apologies if I was maybe misheard. There is no proposal for a relocation of SEPA or the development of a specific office as part of the Greener Grangemouth programme. The Greener Grangemouth programme will be run by, in effect, its own officers within the Invest Falkirk and other partners. It's being delivered as a separate programme within the programme.
Could you elaborate these other partners?
The other partners involved are CVS, Falkirk College, Forth Ports, and obviously the community, importantly, will be a key partner of the Greener Grangemouth programme.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener, and thanks to all the officers who've done a great deal of work, as we're all aware, in the background to bring forward these reports and to move this forward. Clearly, this is a significant piece of capital investment in the Falkirk Council area. But I wonder if you could say a little more about any revenue impacts on either the council or on other partners in this, because clearly there may well be, after you've switched off your telephone.
June?
Or we get an Irish jig, one or the other.
June? So as part of the, Convener, apologies, as part of the business case process, revenue consequences are identified within the full business cases where they're relevant. If you take, for instance, Scottish Canals as an example, they're looking at building a new headquarters at Lock 16 that will clearly have revenue consequences for them. It would be for them to determine that. In terms of some of the other projects, that there is limited revenue consequences, and again, that would be identified as part of that full business case process.
Thank you. And just one other question, if I may. Not today, but in previous discussions, you've referred to this as a kind of hub and spoke system. Now, the spokes only go across the centre of the Falkirk Council area. Have we had further discussions with McGill's and other partners in terms of developing benefits, not only for the central area, but also for the Braes, Bonnybridge and Bowness throughout the area?
And Convener, the short answer is I'm not aware of any detailed discussions with McGill's in relation to the growth deal specifics on public transport. Clearly what the growth deal seeks to deliver is the core infrastructure, and clearly if we invest in that and we improve that does provide the opportunity for further improvements wider out as we progress those. But I'm certainly happy to engage with colleagues in transport planning and provide an update to Councillor Hannah on any discussions that have taken place with McGill's.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Steinbank.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Councillor Hannah's taken one of my questions, but I think it's just a contribution on the Falkirk Central Sustainable Transport Network and Hub project. I welcome the commitment, and I think it's a good project. I think only if it's compatible with our various other objectives in the High Street. I think when the bus stop was moved further down the hill, when the works on Newmarket Street were progressing, there was a clear impact on people's bus experience, even if it was a necessary one. I think we need to make sure that the strengthening of pedestrian links from the hub into the town centre is a key priority within these projects and continues to drive visitor footfall onto Falkirk High Street. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you. Mr. Kettrick, do you want to comment?
Yeah, just to advise in response to Councillor Steinbank's comments, there is greener travel pedestrian travel, cycling is all part of the sustainable transport hub. In fact, it's a critical part of it. It's that interchange between public transport, whether it's rail, bus, and the more foot and person orientated travel into the town centre.
Thank you. Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Convener. And when I've been speaking to businesses in Grangemouth and Falkirk, one thing that seems to be putting off investment is the uncertainty regarding flooding, particularly with the uncertainty surrounding the Grangemouth Flood Protection Scheme. So how is the Falkirk growth deal affected by the uncertainty surrounding investment in the Grangemouth Flood Protection Scheme?
You know, and there is obviously a lot of work going on at the moment on the flood protection scheme. It doesn't directly impact on the growth deal per se, because clearly we have got locations that are within that area that could potentially be at risk, as we do for the Green Freeport and as we do for others. They are considerations in terms of the planning process and in terms of how we take forward the projects. They're in the risk, it appears in the risk registers for all the projects, but it doesn't prohibit us progressing those. But I think what it does emphasise is that clearly it increases the emphasis on finding a solution for Grangemouth Flood Protection Scheme, because clearly there's a huge amount of investment going to be coming forward, and we need to ensure that we protect those assets in the longer term.
Just a quick follow-up on that. Is it affecting any private company investing, knowing the risk of flooding might have a negative impact on any profits?
Convener, at this stage, we're not seeing any impact. I mean, with the announcement of the Green Freeport, we have seen substantial levels of private sector interest in the Grangemouth and the Falkirk area, looking to benefit from particularly the Green Freeport incentives that are supported there. In terms of the growth deal, we've also had a number of interests to support and to partner in terms of projects that are within the programme. So at this stage, it would be premature to suggest that any uncertainty around about Grangemouth is impacting these programmes.
Thank you. Councillor Nimmo.
Thanks, Convener. Can I just start off by saying that I think any investment in this current financial climate that we find ourselves in is to be welcomed, especially for Grangemouth. But this needs to be taken in the context of the SPR and the potential impact of the closure of local facilities. Just reading through the report, it seems to me that we're not guaranteed this money and we could end up having to chase it. Just going by what's detailed in the report. If you look at 7.1 on page 18, the recommendations of this report do not have a direct financial impact on the council. And then if you move on to 7.2, in line with the council's accounting policies, when expenditure is recognised but the grant has not yet been received or paid, the difference will be accrued as a debtor. So in reading that, I think there's huge implications for the council just tied up in that paragraph alone. And if you move on to 7.4, it's also acknowledged that whilst the full deal document gives a framework for delivery of the proposals, it does not legally secure the funding itself. So we've actually got no money at all for this. And it sounds to me that we're going to be chasing money for each project that we're talking about here. Can I maybe just get some clarification in relation to that?
Mr. Kettrick.
Yeah, sure. Convener, the process we go through as we're just completing the outline business case process, you then submit your full deal document, which is this document, to UK and Scottish governments. If they're agreed to that, that puts in place the framework for the delivery of all the projects that form part of the growth deal. For each of the individual projects, you then have to complete a full business case, which picks up the items Councillor Hannah mentioned earlier, like the revenue consequences, some of the associated risks, the deliverability and the specific risks associated with each of the individual projects or programmes. In terms of, once you do that, that then unlocks the money for each of the individual projects. So the money comes through based on the projects, but it's a flat profile funding that you get from UK and Scottish Government. So it comes in a flat, you get an amount every year, and that's hence why there is the statement in there at 7.2, because some years we will get more, some years we will get less, and the accountancy treatment is that where it's not been received or paid, the difference will be accrued as a debtor, and that arrangement works with the Scottish Government on very many, on a lot of items that come in and out in terms of Scottish Government funding, whether it's learning state investment programmes, whether it's strategic infrastructure programmes. There is always a balance that's either owed or outstanding as you go forward with your financial treatment, and that's been agreed with external auditors. It's an accepted practice, and colleagues for finance would be happy to provide the technical aspects of how that all works, because I don't pretend to understand it. The full deal document itself does not unlock the money. It's the full business case parts for each of the individual projects that unlocks the money. Engagement with both Scottish and UK Government, though, to provide an assurance to elected members has been really positive, and there's no suggestion that we will be chasing monies. Indeed, they've actually been really flexible with us in terms of looking at the flat profile and how they can help us.
So this is basically a wish list with the money anticipated further down the line.
No, these are projects that have been agreed as part of the initial heads of terms. So they're agreed, the principles are agreed, the outline business cases have been agreed. This is the full deal document that sets the framework for the delivery of the wider programme. The next stage is then the full business cases. We're not anticipating any issues in the full business case stage before we actually then get to the delivery of the projects.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Convener.
I've got the Chief Executive and Mr. Binney, who both want to come in to respond to that.
Just very briefly, I mean, the partnership with the UK and Scottish governments is very good, and the background to this is not simply that we want the money, but they want to spend it in this area to achieve their own goals in terms of economic growth and inclusive growth. So the partnership is strong. The UK government and the Scottish government are pushing us on this process because they want to get the money out the door and into Falkirk and Grangemouth. So that's the background. That's a really important aspect of it, I think. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Malcolm?
Thank you, Convener. I was just going to say that this is actually a really significant milestone. Elected members will be aware that the Council and the UK and Scottish governments were in discussions about projects that could form part of the growth deal, and then that became the heads of terms process that was agreed in December 2021. And then between that point and this, officers have been working closely with the UK and Scottish governments to develop proposals that gave reassurance to the UK and Scottish governments that there was a viable and worthwhile investment to be made. And we're at the point now where this document is going to be submitted for a formal signing. We had the Growth Deal Board last week, at which the indication from the UK and Scottish governments was that they were satisfied with the work that we had put in to develop really good outline business cases, and that's why we're here in a position of some confidence to submit the document and hopefully get to a signing point later this summer, at which we can then start drawing down the money. So there is really, we're really close now to starting to draw down money. This is not, this should be a moment for us as a council to celebrate and look forward to finally sort of unlocking £95 million of external funding and a total package of £140 million coming into the Falkirk area.
Thank you for that, Malcolm. Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. Probably it's maybe a question for anybody, the three that just spoke. So when we get these documents signed, and I think it's, as Councillor Nimmo says, great that we're getting the investment, and we've probably been the journey through how we've got here. So it's great to get that investment into the Falkirk area. So we sign the documents. When I know there's a chart on page 28 of the supplementary, when will the shovels go in the ground? Because that's what people folk want to see work getting started, eh?
So in terms of the profiles, the first project that's likely to come forward is the skills transition. It doesn't involve shovels in the ground, though. It's at the college. That's the one we would expect it to be commencing first, because it's at an advanced stage and it doesn't involve all the normal things you would find with physical infrastructure. The ones that will come thereafter are likely to be the Canal Centre, which is going to be early into next year. For that commencing, strategic sites will probably happen sometime thereafter, and the others all follow a kind of pretty quick sequence of events thereafter. But there's still a lot of work to be done on these projects. But as I said, as Malcolm said, and as Kenneth pointed out, we're certainly at a position where, you know, we've come a long way. It's a key milestone. Both UK and Scottish governments appreciate the work that's been done on the business cases. We don't envisage any issues. So all being well, the first project, you know, summer, and then other projects going into next year.
And my supplementary question then, if I've got this right, the council will have the money. The money will come to the council, then we'll distribute it to our partners, because it'll not be the council will deliver all these projects. Like the Scottish Canals will be responsible for, obviously, the Canal Centre, and different parts of that delivery will be different partners. So just to let most people will know, but the public know, this will only be folk that delivering on every one of these projects. This is in conjunction with our partners. Is that correct?
Convener, yeah, that's correct. I mean, the college project has been delivered by Forth Valley College. You mentioned Scottish Canals, they will deliver that. The payments come to the council, we then disperse them when they reach their key milestones in the delivery of those projects. The funding comes in a flat profile, as we said, or a virtually flat profile, so it doesn't go up and down too much, and all the projects need to try and align with that programme as much as possible for the payments to be made.
It's a long process. I'm glad we're at this stage, and hopefully we can deliver on what we're talking about in the future. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. I think we need to remember this is a 10-year programme, and some of the larger infrastructure type projects will be towards the second half of that programme, just because of the lead-in time that is required to be able to develop those, design, and around the tendering and things like that. So it will be very much phased, but it is a 10-year programme with probably the larger infrastructure projects more towards the second half of that period.
We'll be ready for the next growth deal.
Well, I see the growth deals around the country, and this maybe will be a very personal opinion, but I actually think that we have much more ability to deliver and get the outcomes on our growth deal than some of the others, which have been a wee bit slow and have stalled. I think that our growth deal has been moving forward at pace, but I have confidence within the outline business cases that we will be able to start and see delivery very, very quickly. Okay, are we content to agree?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Move on to item 6, which is a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit update pilot and phase 1 plan. And we have David Maley, who is with us, but also Gary, who's going to be able to take us through this report. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Convener. This report provides an update on the progress made to date with regards to 20-mile-per-hour speed limits. The first 20-mile-per-hour report was presented at Executive Committee in January 2022, and it was agreed to implement these speed limits in town and village centres as a first step using the then Scottish Government guidance, and then proceed with a phased approach to the introduction of 20-mile-per-hour limits across the road network. However, in early July 2022, Transport Scotland wrote to all local authorities advising of the intention to develop a national strategy for 20-mile-per-hour speed limits, and requested all local authorities undertake an assessment of their existing road network to inform the updated guidance. With this assessment due for completion by the end of March 2023, another report was brought forward to Executive in December 2022, an agreement to proceed. Officers completed the assessment requested by Transport Scotland using the place-based criteria provided and returned the results in spring 2023. The two options for the 20 mph rollout considered by Transport Scotland were either option 1, change to a national default speed limit similar to the Welsh approach, or option 2, implement individual traffic orders on appropriate roads. We now have confirmation that option 2 is the preferred method, and Transport Scotland will support local authorities to expand 20 mph speed limits on appropriate roads. In light of this feedback, this report details the recommendations from officers on how to proceed with the 20 mph speed limits within the Falkirk Council area. As noted in section 5 of the report, officers would first carry out a pilot scheme in Earth, which will allow up to 18 months of assessment where data evidence will be collected on road performance, vehicle speeds and driver behaviour change, and can be used to inform permanent orders. Earth was chosen as it topped a list of selected criteria, such as having an A-class through road, school part-time 20 zones and residential and industrial areas. Section 6.7 of the report details the consultation undertaken with the residents of Earth, showing that over 73% of respondents support the introduction of the lowered speed limit. Further consultation is proposed during the pilot scheme to understand the public perception after its introduction of the new speed limit. And one other key factor was the potential for minimal abortive works in Earth, as if the new speed limit was to be made permanent, as there are few entry and exits. As noted in section 5.12 of the report, officers also propose a phase 1 of quick wins involving 16 settlements throughout the Falkirk Council area, which will be implemented as information is gathered from Earth. The quick wins have been based on small settlements which can be easily updated to 20 mph with minimal work as there are only 2 or 3 entry-exit routes to each of these areas. The implementation of the pilot in Earth and the quick wins will allow the team time to analyse the areas that are more complex in nature to determine the exact start and end points of each of the temporary traffic regulation orders. At its meeting on the 1st of March 2023, Falkirk Council allocated £500,000 to fund works to allow 20 mph speed limits to be introduced. It's clear from the current cost estimates for the 20 mph speed programme that further discussions on budget resource with the Scottish Government will be required to complete the 20 mph signage across the full Falkirk Council boundary on roads that meet the criteria. The pilot project in Earth will again help with the understanding if signs only work or if further measures are needed to be introduced, which will also help inform the wider costing for the full rollout across the area. In conclusion, this report seeks to obtain approval for the implementation of a 20 mph pilot scheme in Earth to gather information before and after on vehicle speeds, assess the suitability for 20 mph limits and gather further public feedback on their introduction, as well as a phase 1 rollout in 16 settlements. This information will be used in further consultation with Scottish Government and will help shape proposals for implementation within more complex settlements and move towards the Scottish Government's target of having 20 mph speed limits on all appropriate roads by the end of 2025. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr Mealy. I'll go to Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Convener, and thanks to both David Mealy and Gary McGregor for the amount of work they've put in with all the groups and putting this report together. The Scottish Government is committed to working with local authorities to reduce the speed limit in our towns and villages to 20 mph where appropriate and by the end of 2025. This report, if approved, will help make these roads safer for all road users. Evidence shows that if you hit a pedestrian at 30 mph, they are 7 times more likely to die than at 20 mph. Let me just repeat that, 7 times more likely not to survive. At COSLA board meeting that I attended just Friday past, Transport Scotland made it quite clear this is about saving lives. It's hoped the change will also improve perception of road safety, encouraging people to walk, wheel and cycle more, thereby improving health, promoting active travel, and creating more pleasant areas in which to live. It would certainly welcome this encouragement, and only recently, while cycling around some beat boxes, part of the initiative to encourage families to cycle, walk, wheel or run during this fun game, came across a sign erected by a resident in Denny stating the point of this is to get kids to exercise. It's pointless bringing them by car. I couldn't agree more. At its meeting on the 18th of January 2022, the Executive agreed to implement 20 mph speed limits in all towns and most village centres as a first step, and to then proceed with a phased approach to the introduction of 20 mph restrictions across the road network. However, in early July 2022, Transport Scotland wrote to all local authorities advising of its intention to develop a national strategy for 20 mph speed limits and requested all local authorities undertake an assessment for the existing road network to be completed by the end of March 2023. At its meeting on the 1st of March 2023, Falkirk Council allocated £500,000 to fund works to allow 20 mph speed limits to be introduced. This committee report provides an update on what has been carried out to date with regards to 20 mph speed limits in line with the national guidance and outlines officers' proposals to progress. First of all, a pilot scheme in Airth to obtain vital information on speeds and public feedback, which will greatly assist future progression of 20 mph speed limits in other areas. Airth was chosen, as we've heard, as it topped the list of criteria: an A-class road through, school 20 per hour zone, residential industrial areas, among other things. One other key factor was the potential for zero abortive works in Airth if it was to go ahead, as there are few entries and exits. I'd like to mention and thank local members, Councillor Bowes and Councillor Jim Flynn, who have been in contact with myself and officers pushing for the scheme within the town of Airth within their ward. They are very supportive of this. Consultation and communication is key moving forwards towards implementation. Consultation as Airth was carried out in February 2024, which showed strong support for the pilot with over 70% supporting a 20 mph speed limit. Officers also propose a phase 1 within 16 settlements within the Falkirk Council area. These have been based in small settlements, which can be updated to 20 mph with minimal work, as there are only 2 or 3 entry-exit routes to the area. Phase 1 settlements are Allendale, Avon Bridge, Blackness, California, Dunmore, Fankerton, Glen Village, Limerig, Muirhouses, which I didn't know where Muirhouses was until this morning, Shield Hill, Skinflats, South Alloa, Stanburn, Stonywood, Torwood and Whitecross. All of these village residents will be consulted prior to implementation. Falkirk Council's Engineer and Design Unit will oversee the implementation of the 20 mph speed limits on appropriate roads by the end of 2025, which is Transport Scotland's target. During implementation, speed limits will be monitored and evaluated and a decision made thereafter as to whether the 20 mph speed limit is appropriate and should be made permanent, modified or removed and reverted to 30 mph. Airth, for example, will have multiple speed monitoring strips installed to see if speeding and speed reduction occurs at different locations and base conclusions around this data. Highland Council have initiated 20 mph speed limits in line with the place-based criteria, as well as many other local authorities implemented during COVID with the Spaces for People funding. Feedback from councils like Scottish Borders have seen decreases in speed in various areas, proving it does work. In 2022, serious road casualties mostly occurred in 30 mph and 6 mile roads. Just over half of road traffic fatalities in cities and towns were pedestrians or pedal cyclists. The majority, 54.4% of serious injuries, were also pedestrians and pedal cyclists, whereas just over a third, 34.6%, suffered slight injuries. Hopefully the full Executive Committee will agree with this report. If we save one life or serious injury, we have done the right thing. Happy to move these recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to thank Gary and David for the report and the many bits of information and presentations I've had from you over the years. I think, as Councillor Garner said, it's something I've always been very supportive of, and I think you two, both of you would agree that in every meeting we've had, I've always been very supportive, particularly the Airth one to start with. As Councillor Garner said on speed-wise, you're talking about urban areas, but they're in countryside locations, and sometimes drivers forget that they're not in the 60 mile an hour region anymore, and they end up in urban areas going far too fast. And I hope there's no accidents, but should there ever be one, if somebody's doing 20 mile an hour and that person survives, every penny we've spent on this is worth it, and that's across the whole district when they come in. So yes, I'm glad to see the information here from the London study and the Edinburgh survey, the 3-year study in Edinburgh, and the reduction in nitrogen dioxide. So again, environmentally, that seems to be something that's relatively strong in it. With that, I will repeat, I'm extremely pleased that this is coming forward. 73% of the people of Earth who responded obviously to the survey have supported it, and I will and always have been. I look forward to the assessments of it, because I think the assessments will feed through and hopefully then encourage other areas not to be looking at it as an imposition, as they will actually be asking for it and pushing for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brown. So I've got Councillor Spears.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the two gentlemen, especially for your briefing session yesterday. I will again raise some of the points that I raised yesterday, because this is obviously a wider forum regarding safe routes to schools, areas around parks, safe zones, because this is especially to stop accidents, I would imagine, not just for the general public, but especially children. As you know, we've been campaigning and trying to get double yellow lines for access and egress to parks for some 20 years, to my knowledge. So it's not just about the speed limit, it's about looking at the thing overall, where we have areas where children can be safe, especially since the travel concessions to school have changed. I know some kids are going to have to walk across some very busy roads in Grangemouth. We also have the problem with the narrow streets in the town where people are parking on pavements. Now, there was a fairly long discussion yesterday about enforcement, and the concern here is that not just the enforcement doesn't appear to be in place, but we aren't looking at the bigger picture and the overall routes that people have to take, the busy crossings, the busy areas. And I'll finish on everybody's favourite subject, the potholes that can cause accidents, whether you're going 10 miles or 20 miles an hour, that can push you off direction. So if you could maybe enlighten us what's happening on the bigger picture, especially since you're going to be incorporating signage, I would imagine double yellow lines will be a big part of that.
Okay, can I just come in and say that the routes to school, the travel to school has not changed, Councillor Spears. The criteria has not been any different. And can I just remind us, we're talking about 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, and therefore could I ask you just to be very brief in some of the wider comments so that we stay on the agenda. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Convener, through yourself. Thanks, Councillor Spears, for the questions. I think in terms of a lot of the points that you raised there, they're 100% are correct. I think, like Councillor Meikle-John has stated, there is other areas that this, obviously the report that's came to yourself today is 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, but we will look at other areas in conjunction with the implementation of 20-mile-an-hour. So we'll look at the safer routes to school. We work closely with our transport planning team who promote that side of things. WL Lines is obviously in the same team, so that's network or waiting restrictions, and we look at access and egress of parks, and we will do so alongside many other elements that we do in our work. So we are updating our road safety plan, and from that we've reprioritised our road safety schemes. So that is certainly an area that we will look at. The narrow streets is obviously pavement parking enforcement, which we've got a members briefing about later on this week, and there's been a briefing note issued out in January this year. So at the moment we're looking at a soft approach to that, and to enforce later on in the year, hoping to change driver behaviours first and foremost before we do look at enforcement, because the logistics of the pavement parking is still to be sorted, so we've still got a bit of back office work to do. The training's only happening next week for our parking attendants, so there's a lot of other areas where we just couldn't start enforcement straight away. And potholes is obviously a roads maintenance issue, but I'll maybe let David touch on the roads maintenance side of things.
I'm pleased you have taken regard of the concerns that I've raised. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, obviously we welcome the introduction of the 20-mile-an-hour zone specifically around schools. Better late than never, certainly. Obviously, we're all serious about road safety and encouraging active travel to school, but I think and I hope that this pilot scheme will highlight the need, if we're really wanting to change drivers' behaviour, that we will need to look at enforcement, which of course is out with a lot of what the council reach is. So when we get feedback from this pilot, should we expect a report back from Police Scotland? Because obviously they have their own issues with underfunding, and I think this obviously needs to work in partnership for it to be as effective as we hope it could be.
David, could you also maybe confirm, we have for some time had 20 mile an hour zones around schools. That's not something that's been introduced as part of this, it's already in place. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks. Through you, convener. Thanks, Councillor Patterson. Yes, just like Councillor Meikle-John has stated, we've got variable speed limits at the moment around about all our schools that are 20 mile an hour. They were implemented many years ago. So in terms of road safety, probably one aspect to look at, it's not in this report. However, we are also doing, alongside the implementation of 20 mile an hour and our new road safety plan, we are doing a full schools roads review. So we're looking at all the roads in and around schools and see if there is areas that we can improve, because we have had a lot of inquiries recently from members of the public and yourself, the elected members, on these aspects. So we're doing that schools roads review. At the moment, it's out in consultation, so all head teachers have been issued out feedback forms. So we're hoping we're going to gather that in this month. We'll analyse and review that data, and then we'll look at the recommendations that come from the report to see if there is areas in and around schools that we can change, and we can make make suitable changes to the road alignment or geometry, or certain measures that we could add, safety measures. So that's certainly going to be included. I think the change in driver behaviour is massive, and that's what we're hoping for. We are fully understanding that we've had to go down the phased approach, because it's an incremental approach, that we're looking at a pragmatic way of viewing it, to say, right, this is why we're doing it, because we're hoping to, like Councillor Bow said, we're hoping that once we go through the pilot in Earth and we look at the phase ones, other areas will want it, rather than, it is going to be a love and a hate. Some people love it, some people won't. But like Councillor Bow said, if we can save one life with it, it certainly makes it worthwhile. And just to touch on the Police Scotland side of things, we are in constant contact with Police Scotland, so we discussed the 20 mile an hour as part of our stakeholder events through the road safety plan. We've specifically not asked Police Scotland to be majorly visible or go through speed surveys in Earth during the pilot, because that could change the behaviour of speeding, and we're not going to get a realistic view of what that people are actually speeding. So if the police are there, people are going to speed less. So but Police Scotland have been involved obviously in the national strategy with Transport Scotland throughout, and they'll enforce as they see fit, along with their standard operation procedures.
Right, I appreciate all that feedback. I'm not sure it satisfies my answers. I hear what you're saying, that we've had 20 mile near schools. I know my daughter's school, the main road next to it, is not a 20 mile per hour zone, so I look forward to seeing how this can be implemented wider. And I totally appreciate what you're saying about Police Scotland would impact the behaviour, so maybe not ideal for the pilot scheme. But I think as part of a wider picture moving forward, Police Scotland have got a massive role to play in it. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses and how that we can work together on that. Appreciate the answers though.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Murtagh.
Thanks, convener. Excuse me. And I think, this is a topic that I've worked on since even before being elected in 2017. And, I think my focus through all that time, particularly for Earth, has been on making the roads safer, which is crucially important. And I suppose the thing I'd like to ask officers about is about, as we know, and I'd fully support having 20 mile an hour zones in places where, as it says in the guidance, where it's appropriate, but that having a limit, which I was agreeing questions just there from Councillor Patterson as well about enforcement. I understand that the point of having particular limits in particular places is because they are appropriate and they are self-enforcing, that having a limit which is not appropriate to the place where it's located actually increases risk, because what you have is you have the potential for driver confusion and you have variable speed, and therefore you will get the people at 20 mile an hour. I will be 20 mile an hour. I will be one of those people. But you will get the people who, as most and as guidance, national guidance shows us, that when they're considering road speed limits, it's about what is the most appropriate limit for this road that drivers will therefore go, and it will be understood and consistent. And then you will get the people who will drive whatever way they want to. But that imposition of the variable speed of the people who will go 20, the people who go 25 because they're trying to go 20, the people who go 30 because they think it's a 30, and the people who go 40 because whatever, or 60. And that's that variable speed that makes it unpredictable. So I suppose, can officers comment on that? And can officers comment on, I mean, I fully support this as a pilot to gather evidence to really show where it is appropriate and at what stages. But perhaps officers could get a bit of comment about that. And it's not a case of saying 20-mile-an-hour zone's good, make safer everywhere, because the wrong thing in the wrong place could make it more dangerous. I'd like to ask officers about that.
Okay, Gary.
Yep, thanks through you, convener. Thanks, Councillor Murtagh. It is a very good point. I think the areas that are most appropriate that can be perceived by different local authorities as different things. So we've obviously carried out a full assessment of our urban road network. We've passed that back to Transport Scotland, and at this moment in time, I believe Transport Scotland are looking to roll out regional groups to make it a consistent approach. But I think just in terms of the variable speeds in the most appropriate areas, I think that's why we're going with incremental approach. So we've looked at the phase ones that are relatively small, in a lot of cases rural areas that there's easily definable start and end points. The extents are quite clear to see. The criteria that we looked at and assessed have been clear, that they're assessed, and that in terms of the place-based criteria, they're suitable for 20-mile-an-hour. I think what we need to do in balance is we're going to monitor through the 18 months temporary traffic regulation order, and we'll not just, like Councillor Gardner stated, we're going to look at that in various areas. We're not just going to put one survey in the middle of the earth and then expect that, if that gets a mean speed of 24 miles an hour, we're happy and that's our job done. We need to look at that in areas, and I think Earth's the candidate for that. Comes in for a 40 mile an hour for the north. There's a new road layout due to the development. Comes in for a 60 mile an hour for the south. There's a very long straight at the south where near the driving range. So, when we're doing the surveying at these areas and we're monitoring, that'll be able to tell us where is currently being adhered to, the 20 mile an hour, and where is not. And then that's when we'll look and understand the compliance levels, and then see what's an acceptable level. And then should we need to refine or modify that start and end points, or look at measures, additional speed management measures, whether that be your active travel side of things that we need to work in conjunction with, our blue-green infrastructure for drainage, our gateways. There's various measures that we can take to make these areas self-enforcing. I think the financial aspect will come in it, and we'll need to have those discussions with Transport Scotland. But areas like Highland, that Councillor Gardner touched on earlier, that they've implemented a full 20 mile an hour everywhere. Slightly different for Wales, but in a lot of areas they looked at place-based criteria and implemented 20 mile an hour. We didn't want to go down that route. We need to use our local knowledge. That I stay in Falkirk, and there's certain areas that have passed the place-based criteria that are looking likely we can change to 20 mile an hour. However, I know from driving these routes that it's going to be difficult to do so, and the mean speeds are probably above 30 mile an hour at the moment. So we're not just want to implement these blanketly and expect people to adhere to the speed limits, because that just makes it, it just increases the risk perception. So no, that's certainly something we're going to take into account, and there's a lot of work to be done. There's obviously 17 settlements here detailed today in the report, but there's another 30. So Falkirk, there's another 30 settlements in Falkirk that are more complex, and we need to look at there in more detail.
Through you, convener, thank you to Gary, and I would like to also thank Gary and David for all the work that they've done through this, and the discussions they've had with me quite extensively over the last few years, really. I think what's clear, to give an illustration, I think it is really, really clear, to be honest with the public about this, because it was mentioned by previous speakers about schemes, for example, in the Scottish borders. And if you take that one, and yes, there was a very positive outlook from that report, but there were many settlements, I think it was about 32 within their schemes, that were put back from the 20 to the 30. Same in Fife, there was, Markinch is an example where things are having to be taken out, and apart from the expense, which would be less than Earth, the public then perception of saying, well, why are you taking this away? I thought this was supposed to make it safer. If it's not understood at the outset that the point of this is to make it safer, and if we put something in which in fact makes, as Gary was saying at the end there, can increase the risk, then that's not positive. So Earth the previous scheme was much more condensed in the middle of the village, where it would be, you know, your bins and chicanes around and more public buildings. This is wider, and I don't have an amendment because I trust that the officers have been very, very open and receptive and clear about what they propose. So just to have clarity publicly in the committee meeting, as Guy was saying there, that the first stretch would be very much not in the previous guidance as being considered to be 20 mile an hour at all, but is now under the new guidance potentially. But we will have multiple areas where this is assessed throughout, not just, as we were saying, one area through the village, but multiple areas, and the data from that will come back to really assess if the limits might need to be less within the village for that 20 mile an hour, and then that data will be analysed and looked at before the rollout to phase 1 it goes ahead.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Murtagh. Councillor Stainbank.
Sorry, could that just be confirmed, convener, that is the case? That's my question, is that can be confirmed.
Apologies, I thought that was a statement from yourself.
No, I want to have it confirmed by officers publicly. Thank you.
Yes, through you, convener, I can confirm that you know, that in essence that's why we're doing the pilot scheme, Councillor Murtagh, that, you know, it gives us that data and that monitoring to then allow us to understand exactly the extents and exactly where people are adhering to these speed limits. So 100% that's going to be confirmed. We're going to be monitoring that, and that will assist with the rollout of every other area.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stainbank.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I think it's very welcome that we're moving to a pilot. As David Maley will know from his very helpful attendance at the Bintascan Residents and Tenants Association last year, there were plenty of communities in Falkirk who were actually quite keen to volunteer themselves for a 20 mile an hour pilot, many of which live next to active travel routes to and from schools, which I think Councillor Patterson rightfully brings up. I think, though, as someone who regularly travels between Falkirk and Stirling, I understand the reason for using the pilot in Earth. The points Councillor Bausch raises about driver behaviour coming out of national speed limits into rural villages and towns is something I hope this approach can challenge, but I'm very keen to look at the data that comes back from this. I do have one question relating to public transport timetables. It's listed in the Equality and Poverty Impact Assessment as being impacted. Do we anticipate the timetable for the F16 bus is going to be impacted, and what discussion have we had at this stage with public transport operators? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Gary.
Yep. Thanks to you, convener. We have had discussions with the local bus operators, and at this moment in time, they understand the need for 20 mile an hour road safety speed limits. Councillor Stainbank, they understand it's road safety. They understand that there's areas where traffic may be operating at reduced speeds already due to the, you know, people have brought up before at members' briefings at parked cars and due to the areas which are really busy. So they've just asked us to remain mindful of the impact on the restrictions that can have on public transport. But we are hopeful that, you know, a lot of these 20 mile an hours are in residential areas where it's not strategic routes to public transport. I think there was a study done, and in terms of residential areas, it's a 3% increase in time for travel journeys, and in city centre areas it's 5%. So you're looking around about normal journeys, you're looking at between 30 seconds and 2 minutes increase on your time, and we will carry out this in conjunction, and we'll continue the discussions with the local bus contractors through our transport planning team when we roll out this.
Yeah, thank you very much for that answer. I think there's many aspects to road safety, but definitely speed is one of them that we have to take into consideration, as well as I think Councillor Spears brought up road maintenance and how much we're putting into that. Thanks, convener.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, convener. I want to say a very big thank you to the officers for bringing forward this report, and I know they've been working on this for a very long time, and it has taken a great deal of effort, and thank you for the briefings that they've given as well. As the officers will know, I have on more than one occasion had concerns from constituents. Ever since I became a councillor, I've had concerns raised by constituents about the speeding on some of the roads in my ward, in the Lower Braes. And sadly, there have been accidents, and sadly, there have been fatalities. So I absolutely unreservedly welcome this process. You won't often hear me saying this, but I also, for once, I'm going to say that I welcome the fact that the Scottish Government is recognising that local knowledge has to be brought to bear in this, that local councils can have some say in this, and it can be rolled out in a way that is taking into account the needs of the local area. What I'm not so happy about is the fact that there's a lack of funding being put forward. There's clearly going to be costs associated with this. And I wonder if you could say a little more about the costs and where those funds are coming from. And the second issue is the question of enforcement. I recognise that it is a difficult one to enforce. On the whole, my view is that most people are basically good and will want to do the right thing, but there will still be issues about people speeding. Gary?
Yeah, thanks. Through you, convener. Thanks, Councillor Hannah. I think that the topics you bring up are two very, very good points. Funding and enforcement. I think in terms of, I'll answer the enforcement one first, and I think just in terms of enforcement, we've got a statement for Police Scotland that states that they'll continue to enforce in areas where to reduce casualties. I think this is a national strategy. So Transport Scotland have had a lot of discussions with Police Scotland. I think I'm right in saying that there's only 8 local authorities in Scotland that haven't implemented 20 mile an hour already, and we're obviously one of those. A lot of that was through the Spaces for People during COVID previously. However, we are going to be one of the first in terms of moving it forward with the place-based criteria, alongside Highland, who have already been the starting point for Transport Scotland. So in terms of enforcement, we'll continue to work with Police Scotland on that. Police Scotland, their view at this moment in time is that the position of Police Scotland in respect of the enforcement of 20 mile an hour aligns with the enforcement activity criteria for all published speed limits contained with the Speed and Standard Operating Procedure, which states deployment of resources must prioritise sites which represent the greatest risk and should only be undertaken where considered necessary and in the interest of casualty reduction. I think Police Scotland have obviously Councillor Nimmo's queried it before about the resources, and that's why we need to look in these areas and make them self-enforcing and make them as self-enforcing as they can be. I think speeding is obviously a major issue. The Police Scotland are the only enforcement agency for that, and that's why we need to look, and that's why we've like I mentioned earlier, with the pragmatic approach, we've kind of done it incrementally in the phases, because there is a lot of areas where the criteria states that areas could be 20 mile an hour. We know that if you just fire up 20 mile an hour signs blanketly, it's not going to work. Not everybody's going to adhere to it. So we need to look and monitor that. And I think the pilot in Airth is one of the main reasons that we've tried to implement a pilot, because we know there's aspects of the road geometry in Airth that gives us a benefit to look at other areas. So I'm thinking about in your ward, there's a lot of frontage on the B805 up through Reading, West Quarter, Rumford that way. And the place-based criteria will probably state that there's areas of that main B805 which could be suitable for 20 mile an hour. However, for local knowledge, I know that it's possibly that it's going to be difficult to do, and that's a main HGV route, it's a strategic route. So that's why we need to look at every single area in detail and look at it accurately and say, is this going to be possible? Because, like Councillor Murtagh rightly said, the perception of road danger would just increase if we just took 10 miles an hour off the speed limit. So we'll continue to work with Police Scotland locally and nationally, alongside Transport Scotland. They'll enforce as they see fit. But I think the big onus is on creating these areas that are self-enforcing, and we need to do that in conjunction with many other areas, whether that's active travel strategies and looking at cycleways through the main thoroughfares, whether that's gateways. Councillor Bundy touched on earlier about flooding with the growth deal. I think flooding's a major issue, and if we can look at green blue infrastructure and sustainable urban drainage systems that will assist that and will make the roads more suitable for 20 mile an hour, that's what we need to do. And then just on funding, obviously, like David alluded to earlier, we've got £500,000 of funding that came through March 2023. We foresee that the signs only high level estimate at the moment is about £1.2 million. We have had very positive discussions with Transport Scotland over the last couple of weeks. We've been in regular contact with them, and we've had very positive discussions on the further additional funding coming from the Scottish Government and Transport Scotland for this. They're aware that this isn't something that councils can afford to just roll out everywhere. So we're obviously looking with them at the moment through the regional subgroups, and I'm in discussions with the Road Safety Policy Manager at Transport Scotland on funding, and they're currently looking at what we can they can contribute this financial year and next financial year to us to help us implement that. So nothing concrete at the moment, however we are very hopeful, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you. I look forward to hearing more about it, and I do hope that we're able to move this forward, perhaps even a little more speedily. I'm not sure I should use that term. Swiftly. Than is currently proposed, because I know that a lot of my constituents would like to see some change.
Okay, I've got Councillor Bundy, then Councillor Nimmo will be the last speaker. Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Convener. In terms of resources, I think it's important to remember that last year's budget, the Falkirk Conservatives helped secure £500,000 to help with the rollout of 20 mph areas in the Falkirk area. One of the first things I want to do is highlight the work of Councillor Jim Flynn. I've known Jim for quite a while, and one of the first things that he said to me when talking about politics was the need to roll out 20 mph in Airth. Jim has lived in Airth for over 20 years, and safety on the road has been one of the main issues that local residents have had for a long period of time. And it has been a frustration of Jim, it's been a frustration of me, that there seems to be a reactive approach to road safety in Scotland and wider, that it was, well, there's not been a major accident yet, so we don't have to reduce the speed limit. And that was a reason given to us for not reducing Airth to 20 mph previously, as well as other places in Falkirk. So it's very pleasing to see that we now seem to be taking a proactive approach and taking the feedback from the local area. It's not only Jim who's been vocal in Airth. I know Bob Smith from the Community Council has been active. And 2 years ago, I was out in Airth knocking doors, doing a survey with Jim. And it was clear then that it was overwhelming support for the rollout of 20 mph. There was very much support, very little negative feedback. And I think this is an element that hasn't been mentioned yet in the debate. When you drive through Airth, you're not just driving on a road, you're driving through a community. People live in that community. Reducing the speed limit is more than just safety, though safety is a very high priority. It reduces noise pollution, air pollution, less disruption for people who live there. And it's very important that as a driver going through a community, you respect the wishes of that community. The people in Airth wanted 20 mph. Thanks to the work of Councillor Jim Flynn and others, they're going to get 20 mph. So this is a success of community empowerment. And I'd like to thank Jim for all his efforts in helping deliver that.
Thank you, Councillor Bundy. I'll take Councillor Nimmo, I will take Councillor Kerr, but I'm just aware that there is actually no amendment to this, and I've been given a lot of leniency to the debate, which has become quite repetitive in some particular areas. So Councillor Nimmo, then Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. I'll try and be as quick as I can. Just enforcement has obviously been mentioned quite a lot during this debate, and ultimately Falkirk Council is not going to have any input with regard to enforcing the 20 mph limit. To be honest, Police Scotland, well, they can't enforce a 30 mph limit at the moment, so what confidence do we have that they're going to be able to enforce a 20 mph limit? I know we already have these limits round about some of our schools, but until Police Scotland get properly funded to take this on board and take it forward, they're not going to be able to enforce this limit either. So I'd be interested in just some comments from officers in relation to that, because it's all very well putting up signs, but signs alone, I would say, aren't just going to save lives. It needs to be enforced properly.
Okay, I'm not sure we can speak on behalf of Police Scotland, but we have touched on this subject already, so if you could be relatively brief.
Yeah, thanks through you, convener. Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Nimmo. You know, like Councillor Michael John says, I can't answer for Police Scotland. I have read out a statement that they've provided to Transport Scotland previously, when Councillor Hannah had asked, and Councillor Patterson obviously asked about enforcement as well. But I think the self-enforcement thing has got to be the route that we go down. So we need to make these areas self-enforcing to ensure that enforcement is minimal. I think that's a national strategy. Like I've said previously, Police Scotland are involved throughout the country. There's only 8 local authorities that haven't got any areas of 20 mile an hour so far. And what we want to do is, you know, we want to use this, like I've said before, in conjunction with our active travel strategy to promote cycleways and promote active travel and reduce the perception of road risk. And we want to use gateways, we want to use blue green infrastructure, like I've mentioned, and make these areas self-enforcing rather than having to rely on enforcement as such, because, you know, we're fully aware. You know, I will also look after the partner attendants and the council, and we have decriminalised partner enforcement for our waiting restrictions, which Councillor Spears has mentioned earlier. And our partner attendants can't be everywhere, so I understand Police Scotland can't be everywhere, and that's why we need to, you know, play a part and make that self-enforcing. Probably said that too many times this morning already, but yeah, self-enforcement is the big way forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerr.
I'll be brief, convener, and I understand that a lawyer's been prepared to understand that. I've got a couple of questions at the end. I really think it's right that we didn't go down a blanket 20 mile an hour. So not go down the Welsh route as the right approach for this council. And I'm glad that it was Falkirk Conservative Amendment that brought the 500,000 forward last year to start the process. So, and I'm glad it got support for the rest of the groups, because I do believe that everybody understands how important it is. I don't think it's an anti-car strategy. It's about safety. And it's about reducing the potential for serious injury or worse. And some of the areas that were mentioned for the next phase have been asking for and pushing for this for their areas, because they realise that the potential's there for injury and worse. So, as already been stated by a couple of people, if this prevents or saves injury or prevents life being lost, it's worth it, every penny. And just I don't know if it was Councillor Steenbank who had mentioned it earlier. Councillor Jim Flynn done his AME run through Earth, and going from the start of Earth to the end of Earth at 30 mile an hour, it took him 1 minute 36 seconds, and then at 20 miles an hour it took him 2 minutes 1 second. So it's an increase of 25 seconds longer, which isn't a long time. So well done, Jim, for taking that strategy yourself. A couple of questions, Gary. How many partner attendants have we got?
Through yourself, convener, we have 1 parking attendant supervisor and we've got 5 parking attendants.
Okay. And the question asked the other day at the briefing, how does the pavement parking strategy affect the rollout of this process, especially in the rural areas, as many of these routes have small, narrow streets where parking is probably both sides of the street?
Through yourself, convener, pavement parking won't directly affect the implementation of 20 mile an hour speed limits, Councillor Kerr. However, it is something that we do need to look at. So at this moment in time, we've assessed all our A class and B class routes. There is obviously a lot within the phase 1 that have their main thoroughfare as an A class or a B class route. You know, the A905 is through Earth. It's a B route through California and Shield Hill. There is a lot of these areas that have already been looked at, the main thoroughfares. We are just starting to progress assessment of our C and unclassified routes. And there is, in the pavement parking legislation, there is the ability for exemptions. So I think I touched on it at one of the members' briefings. However, there is a lot of areas in Falkirk Council that have got narrow streets, and the probably advantage of that is that parked cars are seen as natural traffic calming. So, you know, there is a lot of areas in the Falkirk Town Centre, your Alma Street, your Watson Street, your Phillips Street, where you can't do 30 mile an hour because of the parked cars, and I think that's a positive. However, what we also need to be mindful of is that the exemptions list in pavement parking needs to cover emergency vehicle access. So if emergency vehicles, if cars can't park up in the footway in some areas and they're parking on the carriageway and emergency vehicles can't pass, that's where we need to look at for exemptions. So there will be areas that have exemptions, and we have that. I think that was included in the briefing note sent out to all elected members in January, and I can touch on that on Thursday at the members' briefing as well. But we don't foresee any issues with the implementation of 20 mile an hour against pavement parking.
Thanks, Gary. And if we get funding off Transport Scotland, will we get our 500,000 back? No?
I can't confirm at this time.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Are we now content to agree the report?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 7, which is a referral from the Corporate Partnership Forum, and I'll go to Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Convener. And there's a single policy referred by the Corporate Partnership Forum this time. It's the policy on adverse weather. It's a review of an existing policy, and it's a very light touch review. The changes which are made are referred to at paragraph 5.1 in the covering report, and effectively they're just an update in terminology and an alignment with other existing policies. The revised policy is agreed with our trade union colleagues, and there were no issues raised in relation to that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moody. I think this paper's self-explanatory, and there's minimal change with no adverse comments from our colleagues in the trade unions. So I'm happy to move the report. Councillor Deacon.
I would like to formally second the report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from anyone? Are we content to agree?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Item 8 is the community benefit lease land at Falkirk Stadium, and it's Mr. Keswick.
Thank you, Convener. The purpose of the report is to consider a community benefit lease for an area of land at the Falkirk Stadium complex to Falkirk Foundation. Executive is asked to agree the lease and recognise the positive community benefits that could arise from the proposals, the support that has been gathered from the community, and the evaluation that has taken place to ensure that the transaction complies with the disposal of land regulations. As outlined in the report, Falkirk Foundation provides programmes aimed at, amongst other things, improved physical activity, nutrition, mental health and wellbeing, social inclusion, and the delivery of SQA qualifications. The foundation approached the council to lease a currently underutilised area to the north of the stadium complex to create a facility which will consist of changing rooms, hub and office accommodation for the foundation to enable them to increase their capacity as their existing facilities have limited. The area of land has a value of approximately £1,950 per annum, and at sections 6, 7 and 8 the foundation proposals have been evaluated on both a quantitative and qualitative basis, and on the basis of these assessments the benefits greatly outweigh the potential loss of rental income to the council and therefore are suitable for a community benefit lease. The granting of the proposed lease will enable the foundation to secure funding from the Scottish Football Association, EB Scotland, which is the landfill fund, Sports Scotland, with a total investment in excess of £720,000. Upon approval today of the principles of the lease, the foundation will be able to progress the necessary agreements with partners including Falkirk Football Club and seek the appropriate statutory consents to enable the project to proceed. In conclusion, Convener, the feedback from the Foundation's consultation appears to be supportive and positive, and officers are satisfied that the proposal is compliant with the legal requirements for the disposal of assets at less than market value. An assessment of the proposals has obviously concluded that the Foundation are well placed to deliver the project, and in short, this demonstrates the Council's commitment to work with our community partners to support the delivery of positive projects. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr Kettrick. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, convener, and thanks to Paul for that. I'm pleased to see their support coming forward, and it's another example of the council working with the community partners to develop proposals to maximise the use of their assets. This also supports the levelling in of third-party investment, as mentioned, and new facilities to support the delivery of activities that, whilst based around football, provide so many benefits. We are fortunate in this area to have many community football clubs, and as chairman of another local football club, which has a similar ethos and embedded within its community, I'm well aware of what these benefits are. These include not only physical health, but mental health, inclusive access to sport for all ages, gender and ability. The effects are immeasurable in individuals, families and the whole community, getting kids off the street, giving them some structure and stability, building community spirit and pride. Along with the council leader, I recently met with Derek Allison, CEO of the foundation, to hear all about the setup and its vision. As outlined by Mr Kettrick, the assessment of the benefits that will accrue from proposals, both in terms of the project outputs and the contributions of volunteers, outweigh those of foregoing the rent for what is until now an underutilised area of land at the stadium complex. I support these recommendations, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. I'm happy to second the report that if anyone's in any doubt to the work of the Falkirk Football Foundation, I would suggest you maybe take a look and check up on the recent report that was done, social outcome impact report. Just demonstrates the financial benefits to having such an organisation, particularly the health benefits and the savings that have been made therefore to areas such as the NHS, etc. While it's associated with a football club, it is independent, but it isn't just all about football. There's many aspects to what they actually deliver, from mental health to employability, to engaging young people who are detached from education. So I think this fits very well with the council's the Falkirk Council's plan priorities, and it is right and proper that we seem to be able to support our partners in doing this. Councillor Steenbank.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I can't disagree with that. I think it's a positive
Councillor Steenbank, I think you're on mute.
Emma, can you hear me now?
Right, I can hear you now. Right.
No worries, sorry, there was just a wee delay there. So I can't disagree with that. I think it's a positive proposal to see the land put towards some valuable use. I can't remember that land being used as a regular visitor to the stadium, nor a proposal like this during my time in the council, so I think it's very welcome. And thank you to the Falkirk Foundation for all the positive work they do for the community. Someone who's seen family and friends benefit from the programmes they run. I think the community benefit, as illustrated by Mr Kettrick in this proposal, is as clear as the gap. Falkirk currently at the top of the League One table. I just want to ask a question, because it has been raised. Has there ever been any previous use of the land in the last 5-10 years?
Mr Kettrick.
Convener, not that I'm aware of.
I think especially a few questions that have been raised online by constituents will be satisfied by that, as there was a wee bit of confusion around the community benefit lease. But as I said previously, convener, fully in support of this.
Thank you, Councillor Steenbank. Councillor Bundy.
Thank you.
Apologies, Councillor Spears. I'll come to you in a minute.
That's okay, I'm used to it.
Thank you, convener. I think this shows that there is a shift happening in terms of the delivery of community services, particularly in relation to sport. The shift is going away from council funding to charities taking the lead to get income in from different sources. And if we can support the Falkirk Foundation to get that money in and provide the facility, then I think that shows a good template for the future and how we can work together with charities to support our communities. And because another example is the Falkirk Rugby Club, also in our ward, convener, and they are bringing in quite a large sum of money recently from different sources, and the benefits of that we're starting to see, and that is great. And on that point, I have had people in touch from Bo'ness regarding seeing a community benefit lease, and on the knowledge that the Bo'ness Recreation Centre land isn't going to be sold, then there might be a way there to use a community benefit lease to allow the Bo'ness Rugby Club to attract funding to build a changing rooms, toilet facilities, a gym, etc. And I thought it might be a good opportunity to just bring that idea to the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bundy. And of course, any organisation is very welcome to make an application and go through the process and the criteria there. Councillor Spears, Councillor Nimmo, and Councillor Kerr.
Can I ask convener of climate change, Councillor Deacon, has there been any consideration taken into this being part of the thinnest green belt in central Scotland and the implications on this, especially for our wildlife and migratory birds, etc.? All items that were issued when this community stadium was built. Now, I don't need to declare an interest in the community stadium. Well, maybe I should. I'm a Shire supporter, and it's great to see them playing at that stadium. Does this affect the Falkirk open space plan? Or I could be cheeky and say the Grangemouth open space plan, as I know Grangemouth's near its limit. Thank you.
First of all, can we please make the delineation between the Falkirk Stadium, Falkirk Football Club and the Falkirk Foundation? This is in relation to an application by the Falkirk Football Foundation, which is not the same as Falkirk Football Club. So please, can we just make that clear so that there's no confusion in the public? But I'll go to Mr. Kettrick with regard to the open space in the green belt around the stadium.
Convener, the area of land is part of the stadium complex. It's pretty near to the existing pitches, and as is shown in the photograph, it is rough ground. It is not part of what we would determine the formal open space, which is slightly beyond the pitch where the tree belt is, but it is an area of open space. But we don't recognise it as being part of the formal green protected area.
Okay, thank you.
And my concerns about it being the thinnest part of the green belt and the natural separation between Falkirk and Grangemouth.
I'm not entirely sure that the level of build of this porta cabin is going to have any significant impact on the green belt. I think it's been used for the purpose it was intended. The green belt, it's open space and activity space, so I don't necessarily see or understand where there is going to be any detrimental impact to that.
Convener, I'd certainly concur. There is no, I wouldn't see it as a material impact. The site area is less than 1/5 of an acre. Pretty much adjacent to the existing 3G pitch, and at the next to where the kind of turning area and the car park is there. It is an area of a rough open space, so I certainly wouldn't see it as being a material encroachment, particularly given that it is the narrowing part and it's well away from where the kind of trees are and the nesting and areas like that.
I know there's a great many deer use these fields and they cross over, and we're quite fortunate that there's an old railway line at the side, so they've got access under the roads. But can I come back to our chairman on climate and ask if there's been any investigation done into the wildlife habitat in the area and if this affects them? But as for the green belt, you know, if you chip away a wee bit at a time, there's no green belt left.
That's not really a question. It's appropriate for the portfolios. That's a question for officers. I don't know whether Mr. Kettrick's in a position to give a full answer on that, but I would imagine there would have been some impact assessment done on any application that's come forward.
As outlined in the report, the benefits greatly outweigh any proposals that we would have for that area. It's an underutilised area of ground. We don't see it as a material encroachment into the green belt. There has been significant work done in the area in relation to the impact on the environment from the Westfield development, from the work that's going on at the bog site, from the work that's going on with the roads. We do not see this as being a material detriment.
Mr. Binney, you want to come in?
Thank you, convener. Just to say, I'm happy to ask officers in planning and the open space team to come up with a briefing and update Councillor Spears and anyone else that's interested about greenbelt activity in the Grangemouth area.
Okay, thank you.
Also ask our environmental section to have a look at on the impact on the wildlife.
Okay, Councillor Nimmo.
Thanks, convener. I don't have a problem with what's proposed here at all, but can I maybe just clarify something for the benefit of the public that might be watching? If you look at the photograph and the plan contained in the report, people might well think that the area of ground we're talking about is the area that's actually being worked on at the moment. Can you just clarify what is actually happening with the area that is being worked on and what is it going to be used for?
Convener, the area that's been worked on at the moment is the creation of the full vehicles yard associated with the stadium complex, with the council moving there. We obviously came out of Sealock House, Denny Town House and Abbotsford, and that area will be used for the evening and weekend parking of fleet vehicles to prevent them being vandalised, and also to keep them out the way of the when there is big football matches going on, where parking at the front of the stadium is at a premium.
Right. So has there been a lot of damage to council vehicles where they park at the moment next to the car wash? Is that what you're saying?
No, there hasn't been any, but prevention's better than cure.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Thanks, Vivian.
Okay, I'll take Councillor Kerr again as our last speaker.
Quite convener, what they got involved there?
The foundation proposals are changing rooms, a small office for themselves, and a hub community-based room for them to support their activities on the pitch at the complex.
Thanks.
Okay, if there are no further questions, are we content to agree the report?
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. Okay, we now move into private session. Can I ask that the live stream be stopped and any members of the public excuse themselves? Could I ask members to ensure that they are in a secure area where they can't be overseen and overheard, and that their cameras are on? Thank you.